Hi, everybody, and welcome to BRC-A's Buying Power webinar series. We have an exciting lineup today of experts and a topic to help those of you seeking to understand the broad range of renewable energy purchasing options that are out there. Some being a bit of a variation on the PPAs that we normally talk about, and others being quite different. So today we'll also be joined by, in addition to our fantastic panel, by renewable energy market expert, Jasper Noort from Schneider Electric, will provide us with some insights into the current market. I'll introduce our speakers in just a minute, but just to let you know that today's session will be recorded for the benefit of those who were unable to attend today, and it will form part of our industry knowledge bank, which is located on our website under Events and Training. We will have time for questions at the end of the session, but feel free to also pop your questions into the chat at any time. We'll seek to answer those as we go. Next slide, Alex. So before we get started today, I'd like to acknowledge the land on which I am located today, which is in Sydney, and pay my respects to the traditional custodians of these lands, being the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and also paying my respects to the traditional owners of the lands on which you're all located today. Next slide, Alex. Just quickly about BRC-A. If this is your first time joining BRC, we launched in 2018. And we essentially provide support to organisations looking to procure renewable energy, particularly for sustainable and financial goals for the company. We have a goal now, having met our original goal back in 2018. Our current goal is to help our members to support the federal government's goal for 82% renewables by 2030, with 12 gigawatts of renewable energy projects supported by corporate PPAs and other renewable energy procurement by corporates. So we are an independent information hub, and you can find out a whole lot more about us at our website. Next slide. So just quickly, I won't go through in any great detail, but just to give you a snapshot of what we've been doing this year, we've been doing quite a lot of training sessions for industry in the Central West Iran Renewable Energy Zone, also for smaller buyers via our masterclass series, which we ran for the City of Sydney, City Switch, and the Sustainable Destinations Program, Queensland Renewable Energy Zone regions, and also our corporate PPA buyers bootcamp. Obviously, also a number of the other industry panel sessions that we delivered this year, some of which you would have joined. And we've also developed a number of resources for industry. So if you want to have a look at these, please take a look. We'll send these slides out to you if you're interested. We've also run a series of webinars this year. But what's coming up for next year? So we have recently been awarded a grant by the City of Sydney to commence the facilitation of a buyers group. This is under the City of Sydney's Innovation and Ideas Grant. And so we're now seeking registrations of interest to participate. We're not competing with industry on this. We're providing the early stages facilitation for industry to carry this forward. So if you are interested, please get in touch or jump on that website there. We'll be continuing our work in the New South Wales Renewable Energy Zone of the Central West Orana, and we'll be delivering some more resources for industry, namely we've obviously got our State of the Market report. The full report will be coming out in January, Feb. And we've also got a fact sheet coming out, meeting your sustainability targets with renewable energy, and we'll be launching that in February with the help of our market advisory panel. So thank you everyone who's supporting that piece of work. We've got a whole lot of other training and webinars coming up next year. We'll be popping those on the website very shortly. Next slide. Just a quick snapshot of our website there in case you are new to BRC-A. And then we'll jump into our panel very quickly. Okay, so next slide. Thanks, Alex. So today, as I mentioned, we're going to cover some exciting topics from across industry in the world of renewable energy procurement alternatives. Many of you will look at a comprehensive list of options when building the case for renewable energy purchasing for your business, and others will select more than one option from this list. So we're going to hear today from experts on community energy, project equity and investment options, distributed energy, behind the meter, and urban renewable energy zones. So each of these options today has a different set of pros and cons, as you can imagine. And we present these here as a group, not to compete against each other, but rather to highlight how at the end of the day, the choice really comes down to what suits your organisation, your financial and sustainability goals, and your risk profile. So to our fantastic panel. So kicking off today, and you might want to wave a hand when you jump in. We're going to start off with John Prendergast, who many of you will know is Technical Director here at the Business Renewables Centre. Jonathan has also delivered a number of innovative energy projects, including Australia's first district heating system, district cooling customer agreement, and off-site solar PPA, as well as a number of advisory pieces for corporate PPAs. So Jonathan is going to talk to us about community energy and in particular his experience at the Grong Grong Solar Farm near Narrandera in southwestern New South Wales, which is being developed in partnership with communities, landholders and businesses. Then we'll hear from Greg Story. Greg is CEO, thanks for the wave, Greg, at My Greener Planet. Greg has been involved in the renewable energy and carbon offsets industry for 15 years. He's passionate about enabling businesses and individuals to produce their own carbon credits and generate their own green energy rather than being completely reliant on utilities. So Greg's going to talk about My Greener Planet's project equity model that allows businesses to invest in clean energy generation. Following Greg, we're going to hear from Jonathan Hooker. Jonathan is the Director of Technology and Innovation at Holon Digital Investments. So Jonathan is responsible for delivering Holon's 100% green cloud services, storage and compute across APAC. And he's passionate also about green decentralized infrastructure focused in the Web 3.0 space. Not my specialist area, but his. As a corporate energy buyer, Jonathan is going to provide some insights into why Holon decided to go down the project equity route with My Greener Planet in order to meet their sustainability goals. Following Jonathan, we're going to have Georgia. Georgia Watt is COO at Green Peak Energy and is a renewable energy advocate and leader. Georgia's been working in renewable utility space for the past 9 years, and prior to joining Green Peak was with Living Utilities, which is the multi-utility and asset management subsidiary of Lendlease. Georgia is also very experienced with startups and is a leader now together with the team at Green Peak Energy in behind the meter innovation, and is going to talk to us about distributed energy resources, DER, which generally involves small-scale resources located close to electricity usage sites, such as rooftop panels and battery storage. Then finally on our panel today, we have Genevieve Mortimer. Genevieve is Principal of Innovation Projects at Climate-KIC and is responsible for managing projects that aim to drive systemic change in the climate change space. Jen is going to continue the conversation about DER and tell us about an innovative pilot project, the Urban Renewable Energy Zones project, located in Warringah, LGA in Sydney. Okay, fantastic. So moving right on to the first questions then. Jonathan, I'm going to talk to you, I guess, first about community energy. What can you tell us about community energy here in Australia and globally, and the potential benefits for corporates in Australia?
Thanks, Jackie. There are dozens of community energy groups around Australia, and their projects can take various forms. Some of them have been like Georgia's projects behind the meter rooftop solar sort of 5-10 years ago. Others have been local bulk buys for energy efficiency, for solar and battery storage. Particular interest to corporates might be community scale wind and solar farms. So a leading example is Hepburn Wind, developed 7 or 8 years ago and operational, owned by the local community, 2 turbines, 3 megawatts total. And Solar Share in Canberra, 1 megawatt community-owned solar farm that has a PPA with the ACT government. More globally, community solar is more common in Europe and North America. In America, they call it community solar. It's kind of interchangeable with what we call solar gardens, where people can buy a share of a larger solar asset and get credits on their bills for that generation, because we don't have the rooftop solar boom in the US like we do in Australia for a couple of reasons. And that's been replicated in the UK at the moment with Ripple Energy, but there are many other forms of community-owned wind and solar projects across Europe as well.
And Jonathan, it'd be great to hear, I guess, a project example involving a corporate buyer and maybe what their drivers were for getting involved in community energy.
Yeah, firstly, in terms of drivers, it reminds me of Salesforce's corporate PPA booklet on more than a megawatt. So more than buying renewable energy, what else can you get? Is it regional jobs or long-term unemployment solutions or Indigenous jobs and so on? It could be other SDG goals, and community involvement is certainly something that some corporates are very interested in. So, and a second driver might be, you could be a large corporate with huge sustainability ambitions, but large-scale wind and solar are just too big to create any kind of sort of influence or impact by funding new renewables. So it's an opportunity for corporates with high ambition and smaller energy demand to still get that additionality, helping to finance a new, smaller project. A good example is City of Sydney. So they ran a tender for a retail PPA, and they specified that they wanted community energy as part of that supply. And that resulted in a contract with Flow Power as the retailer, and they contracted with the Repower Shoalhaven Community Solar Farm. So that's a great example in Australia.
Yeah, definitely an industry-leading example there, Jonathan.
Yep.
Jonathan, I'm going to hand over to you now to continue on the questions to our panel. Thanks.
Thanks, Jackie. We're on limited time, of course, and we want to have time for Q&A. So we'll try and keep the answers as short as sharp as possible. Hopefully I set a good example with my first answers. So over to Greg's story from My Greener Planet. It's a very fascinating model, equity ownership. There are a few examples of corporate equity ownership in renewable energy plants in Australia, including fractional ownership. Is this model starting to grow in popularity here, or maybe a comment on the global examples as well?
It's Jonathan. Hello, and hello everybody. It's a fairly limited market. There's not too many people offering this option because PPAs have been around for quite a while. Our structure is unique in that the company who acquires a fractional or shared interest in the solar farm or wind farm, which is operating, does so in perpetuity for the life of the asset of 35 to 45 years. And as an owner in the asset, the company owns the energy that's generated plus the carbon credits which are produced. And the interest can be increased or can be sold out at any time. But the important thing is the company becomes a part owner in the asset itself, and therefore an owner of the energy and the carbon credits. And that's a unique feature, rather than coming in and owning a share of a company, which in turn owns a solar farm. We're offering direct ownership of the asset. And so the company is in effect producing its own carbon credits. So we're disrupting conventional carbon markets by enabling a company to produce their own carbon credits rather than buying from a third party. And as well as that, they own a share of the energy that's generated, which normally is sold to the grid, and therefore the company receives a dividend from the sale of that. And that dividend will, over time, repay the initial upfront capital cost of buying in, and therefore the company ends up with a pipeline or a stream of carbon credits for the life of the assets, which has cost them nothing. So it's quite a unique offering in that regard.
That's fantastic. Business Renewable Centre Australia, we track corporate PPAs and so on. We have a few in our list of direct investments like Newcastle City Council, 5 megawatt solar farm, University of Queensland, 50 megawatts, Sunshine Coast Council, 17 megawatts, and of course Sun Metals, 100 megawatts. So this allows a corporate to own just a share, so they don't have to own the whole solar farm themselves, and they can come in at development, finance, or operational phase. Is that right?
That's right, Jonathan. They're coming in, they're buying a share of the asset, as I emphasised, and it can be any amount that they choose. It can be a very small amount or a very large amount, and generally it's sized to provide the right number of carbon credits to offset the carbon footprint of the company. As we know, solar farms and wind farms are pretty consistent in the amount of energy that is generated from year to year, and therefore there's consistency in the amount of or number of carbon credits that are produced, and so you know how much of the asset you have to buy to give you the right number of offsets.
Fantastic, so innovative. And we've got Jonathan Hooker here from Holon Global Investments, one of your early customers. Jonathan, stepping back, for Holon, what was the underlying drivers for Holon to go renewable?
Yeah, cool. So thanks very much for inviting me today. So ultimately, Holon provides a cloud service, and we compete against large US businesses, right? So what's the unique value proposition versus Holon versus, you know, people like Wasabi or Black Bays? We charge the same amount, $6 to $12 per dip, but Holon runs on 100% green energy. So when it comes to the conversation when they're at board level or they have ESG goals, it's a vastly easier sell running on 100% green energy. So really our clients have driven us to do this, but also as more green energy comes online over the next couple of years, we're going to see a oversupply of green energy in certain areas. So that's why we've created our own little micro edge DCs to take advantage of cheap surplus green energy in some places. And we're a proud partner with My Greener Planet. They've been great for us to offset some of our green goals in Australia.
That's fantastic. Talking about that modulation of demand for renewables is certainly an interesting topic for, I'm sure, many of the attendees today. I'm sure you looked at various options. Corporate PPAs are quite sort of well known and mainstream these days, and you went down the equity route. Can you talk through some of the options you considered before deciding on this, and how project equity worked best for Holon in this case?
Yeah, so the company really knew nothing about the energy market 2 years ago. So we started, investigating it, and there's many gray areas we found, and it was hard to really understand some of the products on offering and where, what good they actually did with the world. So we kind of had to make a stand on like, what does Holon believe in, and what are we going to use, and really come up to two things. We are going to use green energy, atom for atom, behind the meter, or we're going to use green energy from a great solar farm, like from My Greener Planet, and use those LGCs. So we can point at something in this country and say, that's the thing that we own. So that's great for us using My Greener Planet. So yeah, that's
very direct, very tangible for you guys. It was easy to explain, but easy to prove.
We have 260 investors, and you don't want to get into the world of, we get these LGCs and they're from somewhere, but where were they created, all that stuff. You want tangible things that you can sell to customers that will reassure them that you're not greenwashing or all those type of things. Fantastic.
And maybe even more direct, can I say, is Green Peak Energy with rooftop solar supplies. So we're speaking to Georgia next. Green Peak supplies a lot of solar PPAs to commercial industrial buyers. Georgia, can you tell us how does behind-the-meter PPA work? And can you tell us more about some of the examples of the more innovative behind-the-meter solar projects you're working on?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, guys. So a behind the meter PPA is similar to a corporate PPA. You're signing a contract to buy renewable energy from a specific location or generator. We just have the added benefit of that location being on the roof of your business. As it is behind the meter as well and doesn't travel through the grid at all, it removes the network costs associated with moving energy from the generation source to you. As we can offer a contract term of anywhere from like 5 to 30 years, we view our role more as a long-term energy solutions partner rather than just a solar PPA company. And we use our understanding of our clients' energy needs to really help them kind of plan for the future. One of our clients is a large manufacturing company, and we're currently in the process of putting solar on all of their sites in Australia. So it's over 3 NEM states at the moment to help them achieve their Scope 2 objectives by 2025. We've currently maxed out their very large roof spaces, but unfortunately, we've only managed to offset about 30% of their grid consumption. Obviously, we really want to do more. So together, we're exploring, all of the additional things that we can do, and we're using our kind of expertise and knowledge of the market. Some simple ones are kind of, demand reduction and things like that. But what we're really interested in is batteries, and obviously that very beautiful unicorn, the commercial VPP. So we're kind of working towards those things at the moment, but I think everybody knows who works in this industry that there's still a few barriers to entry there, but it's definitely something that we're looking to pilot at the moment with this particular customer.
How interesting. It's great to see such innovation. On innovation, we get asked a lot about battery storage for corporates, and how are you finding that part of the market right now? Is there growing interest and projects happening, or still early days?
So it's definitely growing interest, but unfortunately, it's just difficult to kind of make it stack up commercially. So, right now, batteries at the utility scale are excellent. We can see examples of how well they're working across the country and all the related investment in them. But on that smaller scale for the C&I section, it's financially, it just kind of doesn't make sense yet. With simple energy tariff arbitrage, which is kind of what most people would expect batteries to, do and make money from. It's just not quite there yet, even with some of the ridiculous tariffs that we are seeing in the market. So unless the client kind of has those overriding objectives, the sustainability targets that we were talking about earlier, we haven't seen a lot of instances where it's really stacking up. That said, we are seeing more battery manufacturers, and Green Peak are working very closely with quite a number of them to see how we can look to reduce the costs. One of those ways is obviously improving the warranty terms to see if we can match the large-scale utility warranty terms, and other things that will really help drive that total cost of ownership down. Because that's really where it's like, you can buy the battery and it's fine, but as we're owning the battery for up to 30 years, we really have to, be sensible when we're planning out how much that's actually going to end up costing. But we're really excited for these improvements, and obviously we're working really closely with a bunch of OEMs, because as soon as batteries do become, commercially viable and just be able to be rolled out everywhere, we're going to be rolling them out to as many of our customers and as many sites as we possibly can, because we see the future of DER being that collection of these batteries and solar installations all across the country, and in those, particularly in those renewable energy zones that we've been talking about, and being able to share and communicate energy needs. And we believe that our clients will, and our clients' rooftops in particular, will be an integral part of this.
Fantastic. And from what I've seen for batteries, as you say, and you need that spread of pricing, don't you? And fixed tariffs don't have a big spread, but playing in the wholesale market has a much bigger spread. Over to Genevieve. Jen works on distributed energy resources, DER, and urban renewable energy zones. So talk about innovation, something very innovative. Australia obviously has over 3 million rooftop solar systems. We're a distributed energy powerhouse in that sense. Is this why we're investigating local renewable energy solutions for corporates, Jen?
Thanks, JP. And yeah, thanks for having me. Certainly, one of the reasons, I mean, Australians love rooftop solar. The market is buoyant, it keeps growing. Just yesterday, I read an article in the Renewable Economy that said 330 megawatts were installed in November across Australia, and that set a new record. So I guess it's one of the, not so hidden powerhouses of this Australian energy transformation, and also one where Australia is like a leader in. So that sort of doesn't stop there. There's certainly calls for more distributed energy generation, and it's almost increasing in some ways in importance. And so the urban renewable energy zones in part does respond to that. So if you look at the integrated systems plan, it's calling for a 5-fold increase in rooftop solar by 2030. We know it can potentially be a very quick source of generation. You know, large scale is obviously super important and all this transmission build out, but have to wait for that to come on board. And so when we looked at urban renewable energy zones, it's like, how do we get more quicker was a question. The other thing I really know is it's popular. So part of the work I do at Climate-KIC is we work with communities across Australia who are asking for, and business asking for, how can we get more solar on roofs in our community? And groups like Solar Alliance Brookvale in the Northern Beaches organise, they have a solar ambassador program to just do just that. So it's got this sort of support because people can see it happening and be part of that net zero transition. And probably worth saying that the aggregate of all the distribution and energy is not a marginal source of supply. You know, if we were to do it across all the opportunities of suitable roofs, we would meet the energy demand today, which is obviously going to grow significantly in the future, but it's not marginal. And just like responding to George's thing, when I flew into Melbourne on the weekend, I always often take a little peek to see what sort of rooftops I can see covered in the commercial area. Get excited by that IKEA roof being completely filled, but like at the moment, there's getting more, but there's still a lot of naked roofs without solar on those commercial areas that could be. And so urban renewable energy zones and the local PPA model, it's really trying to incentivize that side of it.
And tell us more about how an urban renewable energy zone would work. Is it about sort of orchestrating battery storage and solar in a local precinct, or is it about seeing these rooftops as future solar farms, not just sort of limited to their on-site demand?
Yeah, so the model we're using is going through testing this idea of a local PPA. And so, and we're pulling together pilot projects under CRC, a cooperative research centre called RACE. So Urban Renewable Energy Zones was originally a project looking at what the possibilities were, and a bunch of options came up. Basically said, this is a really good idea, a bunch of options. And now we're looking to, under RACE, which stands for Reliable, Affordable, Clean Energy, set up these pilot projects to test what a local PPA could look like in practice. And so here's the scenario. So you got a local PPA, say there's a local bus depot. So this is sort of a real world scenario I'm giving you. Local bus depot that's electrifying its fleet over the next 15 years. They bring on 5 buses, then 50, scaling to 150 by 2030, 2040. And if that new energy load in the area has some significant crossover with a daytime charging load, what we've seen in areas is actually nearby there's large commercial industrial areas with a lot of naked roofs. So in that same community, basically, in theory, the oversupply, these businesses could export some of that energy and use to power the buses. The key thing is that middle point, that unicorn, is so we're working with retailers, technical service providers, and partnering with the distribution network to kind of build that aggregation feature, which aggregates that local supply and then on-sells it to the depot. So as I said, we're looking at real-world opportunities. There's certainly benefits and challenges to this model. And so, I'm happy to jump into a couple of the benefits and then a couple of the challenges, JP, if that's...
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, great. So what we're finding is the reason people get excited about this, so local community, politicians, we see that they want more solar. From the side of the user, the demand side, this tagline of being powered locally, if you have that on your bus or whatever, is quite strong. So you're kind of moving even beyond the normal social license to operate. Obviously, what you're doing here is you're adding additional value to those, an offer for those local businesses to export their solar, and they'll get a higher price than what the current feed-in tariff is. And, then we start moving into these models where these bus depot in urban areas do look at becoming some form of battery on wheels. So as solar ramps up, these large loads are then absorbed by the exported output. And this supports the distribution network. And if we can explore how these models work, we get more investment in here and bring down the cost and speed up the energy transition. The challenges are there's obviously going to be a lot of high transaction costs in this. And so basically the business model trades off this idea that there's a lot of benefits that can be maximized, but with a transaction cost. And so you're trying to find over time, either improve that cost over time, or find more of those win-wins and continue that kind of richness that can happen when you've got different, batteries and other aspects of the electrified communities responding to each other. I'm also very much aligned with, I know Jackie said it before, and BRC-A is a very sort of horses for courses. Different businesses will need different things. And for a lot of businesses, it might not be that they want rooftop solar. It could be the actual nature of the structural nature of their roof. It could also be that heard that it's not an addition to have people having to come on site that aren't their core business. That's a problem. It could be the shape of their load of the large load nearby doesn't really match that solar as effectively as, say, some others. So there's a bunch of reasons why that's practically. And so I guess this is obviously just trying to add more options for commercial businesses in these areas.
And Genevieve, obviously people can get in touch with you if they're interested in learning a little bit more about that, or in fact in investing in that. That's fantastic. So
absolutely.
We might move on to questions now. Jonathan, you might want to have a look through these. We've got a number of questions. I think just quickly, Grant Hinner asked a question that I think was, directed towards Greg, just to kick things off. Grant has asked, can stakes be purchased across the portfolio of generating assets? So I guess not just one asset, but multiple assets. Greg, how does that work with My Greener Planet's model?
Yes, that's right. The projects can be grouped, and they can be grouped amongst one or more solar farms, as well as solar farms and wind farms. So you can take an aggregate investment across the portfolio. You receive or you obtain a direct interest in each of those assets on a group basis. So it's spreading the investment amongst a group like that. And an important feature of My Greener Planet is that you become a part owner of that asset, or each of those assets. So we're replacing the third party owner with the company itself that wants the carbon credits and wants the energy. And I didn't mention before that as an owner of the energy, it can be sold to the grid and you receive the proceeds of the sale, or alternatively, the energy that you own from one asset or a group of assets can be sleeved through to you at nil cost, which we do in conjunction with a retailer. So it's either one, it can be one asset or a group of assets.
That's great. Thanks very much for that nice comprehensive answer there, Greg. Back to you, JP, with questions.
Yeah, we had another question about building integrated PV, and I might take that one. I guess Business Renewables Centre specialises mostly in off-site renewables, and this session is around innovative solutions. I think Jen mentioned before the evaluation we've done on Australian rooftops is 189 gigawatts of rooftop potential that could satisfy all of today's energy demand. So less of a need for building integrated PV if we've got that much rooftops, and it possibly does cost a factor more than rooftop solar. And Paul, I notice you're from the US. Rooftop solar is incredibly cheap here in Australia, about half the price of US as well, making things like Green Peak's rooftop solar PPA very attractive compared to grid power.
Jonathan, can I just quickly jump in on that one, actually? We, as I mentioned earlier, work with a lot of OEMs, and one of the ones that we had a chat with the other week was actually someone who is trialing cladding PV and has just done an installation in Melbourne, actually, on one of the new builds down here in the CBD. So while we do see that cladding is a very interesting option for PV, and particularly in these kind of, urban CBD areas, the only issues that we're really finding at the moment is, the cost comparisons between, as we said, the very cheap rooftop solar that we're able to get on, and the actual output. So the cladding PV modules are significantly lower generating than your regular rooftop, but it's definitely something that Green Peak Energy as a PPA provider is interested in, and we're looking at, constantly being aware of what's coming into the market, leading edge, not bleeding edge, of course. Need to make sure that my head of projects doesn't smack me around too hard for buying something that he won't be able to install and then manage. But while we're, we've got a lot of kind of those large-scale real estate companies who are so interested in just being able to see what else they can do, because a lot of those, city skyscrapers don't have a lot of roof space, and it's definitely one of those items that has potential, but I think we need to fill our commercial roof spaces probably first.
Thanks, Georgia. Of course, you've got so much photovoltaic experience that I should have thrown to you as well. I've got another question for you from Liam Owen. He asked, does Green Peak Energy build, own, operate and maintain solar systems under the behind the meter PPAs? And do you have ground mounted solar as well as rooftop?
Great question. Thank you, Liam. Yes.
So Dorothy Dixie, did you organise this one, Georgia?
I did it. I'm very proud of it. Yeah, so with the behind the meter rooftop PPAs, we basically just put the solar panels on your roof, and you never have to worry about them. We do absolutely everything. So we do the building, we obviously do all the financial investment, and then we operate and maintain and insure, which is something that people forget about. You have to insure those things on your roof for the life of the contract. So all you get is energy, and it just happens to come from the top of your roof. We have been exploring a number of ground mount options. I think we're doing our first ground mount install coming up in the early next year. We kind of tend to do the smaller ground mounts, so more kind of commercial side ground mounts, particularly interesting on kind of agricultural land. So between that like 1 to 5 megawatt space. Trying not to play in the large scale solar farm area. That's not our bag. We'll leave that to other people. But yeah, ground mounts are definitely, especially or in more agricultural and rural areas, they're definitely something that can stack up.
Fantastic. Question for Greg from David West. What does a sleeved at nil cost entail? I assume there is a retail margin. So I think that's mostly asking about the $0 if you're sleeving it. How does that work, Greg?
Yeah, David, that's correct. The component that is free is the wholesale price that's sleeved through at nil cost, because you as the company, as an owner of the solar farm, own the energy. But yes, there will be a retail component and a transmission component.
Fantastic. Another question for Georgia. How does the Green Peak model manage generation output when the spot price is negative?
So we don't actually work in the wholesale market. Most of our customers don't either. So the majority of the customers that would be looking for a behind the meter PPA are buying through a retail contract that's not necessarily set up as spot market. And that just means that we're hedging prices against retail energy rates rather than that variable spot market.
And I guess you have a long-term relationship, Georgia, with the client there, and they might change retailers and retail tariffs over time. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So, everyone that we work with is, we're pretty agnostic for retailers. It's a completely separate contract, our PPA. So you're free to have whatever retailer you want. And it doesn't matter if it changes. We do price reviews as well for our long-term contracts to make sure that at the term renewal, we're, still offering a benefit to our customers. We don't want to be ripping anyone off. It's not our business model.
So I guess the one way that negative prices, particularly in, say, South Australia, Victoria, in recent couple of years, that's coming through on retail tariffs just as lower feed-in tariffs, but a customer is not exposed to the negative price. Is that right?
That's correct. So we don't actually, so the feed-in tariff goes directly to the customer, and we don't actually account for that in any of our savings estimates. So any of the kind of wholesale market issues or benefits, I guess, we do like those sometimes as a consumer myself. That doesn't necessarily impact the kind of, I guess, savings estimates that we do and assumptions that we make in our modeling.
Fantastic, thank you. I thought just an interesting topic just to have clarity to all the audience here. Jen, a question from Ben Maddox. Thanks, Ben. When you're looking at industrial roof space, are you finding you have to consider lighter weight panels, as some industrial style buildings have not considered structural requirements for solar?
I've certainly heard, so Solar Alliance Brookvale and their Solar Ambassador program and other community groups that are looking, that are sort of connected with around getting more panels. That's for sure one of the things that have come up. So interested. And I guess there's this interesting thing where new technology, that cladding was a similar example, where hopefully there's going to be new technology and new options, lighter weight, that mean that over time some of this becomes easier. And so part of the urban res model is to really get that aggregation and that service offering. That means that different things, people can come on board as we solve some of those issues and put more solar on. So yeah, I've certainly heard that that's a key, a constraint for some businesses.
That would interfere with your development process too, wouldn't it? That before you even know if you can do a project, you've got to pay for a structural engineer to go and check the roof and these sorts of things. So it's a bit painful. Yeah.
So there's these real world things, like obviously it's sort of structured. There's a huge amount of value on the table for all the reasons I sort of talked about, but there's also this real world situation, but also we kind of need an offer to these businesses in order for them to do those sorts of engineering checks and things like that. So that's what we're aiming to get.
So many great questions. We've got time for a couple more, and there's another couple in there for Georgia. Ben asks, are you considering network peak demand charges in those business cases for battery storage? And just to round out that question, also the potential for batteries to be behind the meter but play in the wholesale market via a child meter and also potentially get FCAS revenues. Is that part of your comment that they're not quite being financially attractive just yet?
Yeah, correct. So when we do our tariff analysis, we do look at kind of that whole of market options. So definitely we work with the network demand tariffs. That's part of the arbitrage offsets when we do kind of solar and battery combinations. It really depends on what your demand tariffs are and how much we could actually look at lowering them. The WEM, for instance, is an absolute nightmare and drives me crazy because I can never seem to quite offer as much savings as I had hoped.
So that's the Western Australian market?
Yes.
Yes, for the new players here.
Yeah. I promised I wouldn't use acronyms. My apologies. So we do look at that kind of whole of market, and with the front of meter FCAS revenue and those sorts of things, it's definitely part of all of our modeling. It is slightly riskier, obviously, because you start to then have to do a lot more analysis on kind of the future of the market and what FCAS revenue would be, and because it's a little bit nascent still, there's not entirely reassuring verified amounts of information out there, and no one necessarily knows what's going to happen. So we obviously have to build that risk into our modeling as well. But that is all part of the things where we say that, does it stack up financially, commercially? Maybe not just quite
Just
yet.
cheekily there, FCAS for new players. Georgia?
That was Jonathan.
Oh, right.
True. Frequency control ancillary service. There's just an additional revenue stream that batteries can receive for supporting the grid at those key moments when there's an outage. Now, I think a lot of our buyer audience today would love to hear more from Jonathan Hooker and his experience. Jonathan, could you speak to or touch again on the importance of traceability? Did you look at different options on how you can trace your renewable energy output and how it's powering your demand? Just on that topic.
Yeah, so at Holon, we provide verifiable storage. So we use blockchains to verify every piece of data. We're actually starting to run software on every server in our cloud infrastructure, which will in real time record the energy being used from the CPU, the GPU, the memory. And then what we do is we take that data and we can record it on the blockchain and then pass it back to our client. So what actually you're getting is 100% green operations, but I can cryptographically verify that this is the energy that when we did some work for you, this is the energy it used. So this is a complete mind shift from the old world where nothing's transparent and you can't really get at that information to 100% transparent, which is great for boards when they say, you know, are we green? Yeah, we can verify our greenness down to every process in every second, which is, yeah, super interesting for the new world we're going into.
Yeah, certainly. Historically, we've had renewable energy certificates like LGCs, and they're accounted for across an annual basis. So you guys are really getting into that detail and paving a new way of that traceability. So for Holon, you've spent 2 years investigating, landed on an option you guys really like. What do you see for the future? Is it more of the same, battery storage, other opportunities?
I think it's a blended approach of, so in New Zealand, we run on hydro, which is on the grid. In Australia, it's going to be a combination of running behind the meter and also purchasing a stake in My Greener Planet solar farms. So it'll be kind of that blended approach across the mix. We're moving into the Middle East as well, Abu Dhabi, Sharjah, and Qatar. So we're kind of looking where we can get green operations out there as well. So it will just be blended globally, but ultimately it'll be behind the meter, or we will purchase solar farms.
That's fantastic. Thank
over
you.
to you, Jackie.
Oh, go for it. Greg, were you about to say something as well there?
No, that's fine.
Oh, good. No problem at all. Feel free to jump in. I just noticed, sorry to jump in there, a question from Sal there that I guess each of you might be able to answer, but it was originally addressed to Jen. Often C&I customers are tenants. What is the appetite of landlords to allow solar to be, I guess, installed? And I suppose the appeal for the other models, if you are a tenant type C&I company, and what the challenges are there, probably starting with you there, Jen.
Yeah, I'm sure there's and Georgia and others can have opinions on it. And obviously sometimes that landlord-tenant thing might take you down another path. Other times it could be that they still can participate in this local PPA urban renewable energy zone model. And in the case, maybe the retailer looking at models where a bit like Green Peak, you own, operate, install, that sort of actually isn't done by the business itself, but they get more value for it and a better deal is passed on to their tenants. So you can kind of create a model which should still be a win-win. That's the theory here.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. We work a lot with customers who are tenants. And also sometimes we work directly with the landlords themselves because they're the ones who are interested in having solar on their roof. And obviously we're a capital-free solution, so they get all the benefits and none of the cost or risk. There are a lot of different models kind of in the market. We can do kind of a revenue share with landlords who, obviously never really expected their rooftop to be a rental generating space. Obviously, it's not the same square meterage rentals as you get in the rest of your commercial building, guys. But a lot of the landlords are actually really passionate about it because they understand that having solar on their roof for the benefit of their tenants actually enables stickier tenants and often higher quality tenants who are looking for, those kind of more sustainable buildings. It can help them achieve some of their Green Star accreditation, those sorts of things. So there's definitely a lot of appetite for landlords in the market at the moment that we see.
And obviously thanks very much, Jen and Georgia, and obviously no real distinction necessary, I suppose, with regards to the My Greener Planet model. You can go ahead and do that, be you a landlord or a tenant there. So I might just wrap up the questions. Thank you, everybody, for your fantastic questions. There are a few more there. There is one there about the effects of zinc and cadmium. There are a number of studies out there about solar panels and sustainability. So I'd encourage you to look particularly at the Clean Energy Council's website for those. But I believe there's quite a lot of work being done in that space. Georgia, I think there might have been a few other questions, so we're happy if you want to type your answers away in there now, or if you want to just, we can send those through to you separately, although I see a couple of them are anonymous, so that will be difficult. Yes, so thank you, fantastic, and thank you, Jonathan, for that excellent moderating of that session as well. And so then for our final session today, as promised, we have a market update, and now introducing James Noort, Associate Director of Energy Markets Team in Schneider Electric Sustainability Business. So Jasper, did I say James a moment ago? Because I do that really my name. I'm so sorry. Jasper spent nearly 15 years forecasting Australian energy markets, managing hedging and trading programs, negotiating energy supply contracts, and advising on regulatory risk, including submissions to regulatory consultations. So please take it away. Thanks very much, Jasper.
Thanks, Jackie. I will just share my screen, which hopefully, here we go.
That's worked. Thanks, Jasper.
Great. So as I only have 5 minutes, I will keep it short. So please reach out for any further discussion or follow-up. So first up, I will address a few government announcements with COP28 obviously being ongoing and very important for action on emissions in the next 5 to 10 years. So the Australian government just yesterday committed to the scale up of renewable energy, kind of internationally committing to what they're already doing with the capacity investment scheme, which I'll get to in a minute. But in addition to that, they've also committed to doubling energy efficiency. So I suppose we should see further action on that in the next 2 months. You imagine that the government wouldn't do that without having some plans to follow through on that. In addition to that, we've also seen a supply chain engagement pushed through the Science-Based Target Initiative, and basically what we're already starting to see increasingly to address Scope 3 emissions through supply chain action. So if you're not planning to do something already, your customers may start to ask what you're going to do sooner rather than later. And to help companies with that, we are launching a paper on supply chain action soon. So then moving on to Australia itself. So last week, the government announced the Capacity Investment Scheme. So this is a scheme that will facilitate 23 gigawatts of renewable energy and 9 gigawatts of storage by 2030. However, it will overlap with state targets. So state targets, 12 gigawatts in New South Wales by 2030, 10 gigawatts of renewable in Queensland by 2030. Would already absorb a fair amount of that. So while it may not, substantially increase the action, it will help to drive those targets and achieve those targets. In addition to that, from a pricing perspective, it should firm up the increase in renewable energy supply. And with that LGC supply, which should then help to drive the currently relatively high LGC prices lower as supply increases towards 2030 and voluntary demand may not keep up with that increase in supply. Obviously, that's all still subject to the scheme being successful. So in terms of prices, I'm going to focus on retail PPA prices, where we've seen the most movement recently. As you can see in the top chart, we've seen a fair decline in near-term contract prices, which do influence retail PPAs, as retail PPAs are often using existing projects that basically do try and shadow price what they might be able to achieve in the market. So those prices have been declining for the last 2 months in particular. And a key driver for that was the relatively low spot prices, as you can see in the bottom chart. So those prices have been driven by good coal-fired availability and significant growth in renewable energy output, in particular rooftop and large-scale solar. While temperatures have been above normal, there hasn't been a lot of extreme hot weather, at least in the eastern states. We have seen some hot weather in Perth already, but in absence of that hot weather, we've seen spot prices remain low, and that's been driving a decline in the forward prices. Now, that may not last going forward. That hot weather is still expected in the next few months. It's going to be the first El Nino summer after 3 La Ninas. And if we do see periods with high spot prices and price spikes during summer, we could see tight supply situations and high spot prices driving forward prices up, and that would then flow into retail PPA prices as well. And finally, we should tomorrow, I'm hearing, get a final determination from the Australian Energy Markets Commission on the market price cap, which is currently around 16,600. And in the draft determination in September, they were suggesting it would go to 22,800 by 2027 before applying CPI on top of that. So price spikes will become a lot more influential in overall wholesale market prices, and buyers should consider that when they think about the most appropriate type of PPA to consider. And that was basically the update I was planning to provide.
That is fantastic, and just within time. Some really great and detailed analysis there. Thanks very much for putting that together, Jasper. We greatly appreciate it. And obviously people can get in touch with Jasper if they have any questions about that analysis. With just 1 minute to go, I wanted to just say thank you so much to our panel. And please join me in thanking these wonderful experts who've joined us today. Thank you, Alex, for his excellent management skills of the session. Quick wave, Alex. Thank you, Jonathan, for your wonderful moderating. And we'd like to also say a really big thank you to all of our members and everyone who joined today, and have a fantastic Christmas and New Year. Please join us again in the new year. We'll be kicking off with a webinar on the market outlook for the new year, and probably, I think, supply chains once we jump into that in February. But for now, feel free to join us on our website, or contact us on our website or directly for any more information about next year. And thanks very much.
Thank you all. Great panel, great questions.
Everyone.
Well done. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.